Welcome to Simple Forms. From stone implements approximately 20,000 years old to contemporary art installations, this exhibition presents some 130 carefully chosen examples of simple forms from around the world and through the ages. Let us start by looking at Brochai's sculptures. Though Brochai is known primarily as a photographer, in parallel with his photography, he created a series of small sculptures that are endowed with gentle curves. For materials, he used simple stones found by the sea. From titles the likes of Eastern Prince and Black Venus, we can see that the stones he singled out gave flight to his imagination in free and fanciful ways. Thus, in seemingly useless objects, such as the stones and the pieces of wood that Le Corbusier or Charlotte Perriand gathered at the beach, was found supreme beauty. Through works such as these, in Section 1, Metaphysical Landscapes, we will look at how people have discovered the beauty of nature. When Okada Koyo visited Yamanashi Prefecture in 1916, he was moved by the majesty of Mount Fuji and became captivated by the mountain's divine beauty. He went on to take some 400,000 photographs of Mount Fuji during his lifetime, and to declare, "Mount Fuji is my life." Many of Okada's photographs of Mount Fuji have been used to represent Japan on stamps and paper currency. Two examples, shots of Mount Fuji as seen from Mount Shichimen, are included in this exhibition. Located almost due west of Mount Fuji, Mount Shichimen is a sacred mountain for Buddhists. It is famous as a place where twice each year, in spring and in autumn, worshippers come to pray in the sacred light from Diamond Fuji, when the sun, at sunrise, sparkles like a jewel at the crest of the mountain. In 1943, the Great Sacred Mountain was the first photographic work to be presented to the Showa Emperor. Both photographs are in monochrome, with gradations that capture both the exquisite form and the texture of the mountain, creating a fantastic landscape that, as the Japan that lives in Japanese hearts, never ceases to fascinate us. Simple forms have been revered around the world down through the ages, their beauty and serenity providing people a spiritual refuge. In Section 2, Home for Solitude, we display a spatial installation by leading French artist Xavier Vaillant, together with various objects of art and craft that channel simple beauty. Xavier Vaillant uses multiple media, photography, sculpture, objects, video, and installations, to reduce complex phenomena to their bare essentials. Rays is an installation in which wires and rubber bands are stretched through space, the lines forming planes, and those planes in turn creating geometric forms. This work compels us to ponder space and dimensions, creating a spiritual space that transcends space-time. We invite you to enter the space, sense the beauty, and understand what is meant by a home for solitude. Chojiro was the founder of the Raku line of potters known for rakuware. He was one of the Senkei Jisoku cluster of artisans making tea utensils for the three main schools of the tea ceremony: Omote Senkei, Ura Senkei, and Mushano Koji Senkei, that started with Sennorikyu. Unlike ordinary pottery, rakuware is worked by hand, rather than using a potter's wheel. Whenever the first Chojiro is mentioned, it is always mandatory to mention the presence of Sen no Rikyu in the background. In the world of tea, Sen no Rikyu's influence is immense. His aesthetic sensibilities are mentioned whenever we talk about things Rikyu made, things Rikyu possessed, things Rikyu enjoyed, or Rikyu style. Stripped of any element of expression, this random, unpretentious, unalloyed beauty is a sensibility that also resonates with the monotone and simple as best ethos of contemporary design. The constantly changing form of the moon has provided people with inspiration since the dawn of time. In particular, the Japanese seem to have often gazed at and observed the moon. The moon's waxing and waning speak of energy and the vitality of life. And the insole, a circle painted with a single stroke in Zen calligraphy, represents the entire universe. The simple forms of the moon and the insole captivate us as expressions of the invisible forces that exist in nature. To the Zen priest who painted it, the insole represents enlightenment. However, to those whose Zen seeks enlightenment on a higher plane, it represents a place at which enlightenment cannot stop. The left-hand side of this insole painting includes the word kute, meaning eat this. By eating the circle and making it disappear, Sengai envisaged attaining the state of enlightenment. Upon entering the gallery, a round prism ring suspended from the center of the ceiling slowly rotates in the light, forming an artificial round rainbow or circle. This work is also a laboratory of sorts that allows us to experience how lighting effects and rainbows are generated. Olafur Eliasson often analyzes natural phenomena such as fog, sun, and rainbows in a scientific manner, and reproduces them as installations. What the viewer thinks and feels in response constitutes part of the work. In these installations, natural conditions undergo scientific analysis, and, it could also be said, lose their mystery. Yet at the same time, by boldly revealing their mechanics, Eliasson conversely appeals to our perceptions, giving rise to a heightened awareness. Advances in science and technology from the late 19th century to the early 20th century gave rise to new simple forms that captivated artists. In 1912, when the fourth aerial locomotion show was held at the Grand Palais in Paris, it was not only the general public, but also members of the avant-garde, the likes of Marcel Duchamp, Fernand Léger, and Constantin Brancusi, who flocked to the venue. It was then, to Léger, that Duchamp purportedly made the prophetic comment, "Painting is finished. Who can do better than that propeller? Tell me, can you do that?" This challenge, laid down by Duchamp, would produce, in the following year, the artist's first ready-made bicycle wheel, which, along with the propeller, moves in a circular fashion. Constantin Brancusi, along with Marcel Duchamp, visited the aerial locomotion show in Paris in 1912, where he was deeply impressed by the propeller and aeronautics. Just 2 years earlier, Brancusi had created the sculpture of a bird he called Maestra, inspired by the legendary Pasarea Maestra of Romanian folklore, a messenger of love who guided and protected Prince Charming in his search for his princess. Following the aerial locomotion show, in his quest to express a bird taking flight with only the most fundamental of lines, Brancusi transformed Maestra into the Bird in Space series, to which he devoted over 30 years of his life. In this series of elongated shapes, Bird in Space continually transforms. Over 30 variations, made of marble, bronze, and plaster, were created, the artist himself even photographing them at times. Geometrical images could be said to be expressions of physical or mathematical regularity. The mathematical sciences based on modeling and analysis of the late 19th century that represented phenomenon in space-time gave rise to previously non-existent forms known as mathematical models. In mathematics, it is the formula that is most important, the geometric model being nothing more than a representation of the formula. As opposed to a work of art as an expression of the creativity and originality of the artist, a mathematical form is the result of a long process undertaken by several mathematicians, sometimes over several generations, a process that may even continue into the future. At the same time, these mathematical models introduced artists to abstract art forms as a completely new criterion that predates modern abstract art. From this perspective, we invite you to view the works of Man Ray, Sugimoto Hiroshi, Antoine Pevsner, and Kuroda Taizo. 18th century crystallography shed light on the true nature of the previously unknown mysterious forms of crystals, fascinating artists. In his 1783 book, Crystallography, Jean-Baptiste Romé de Lille, one of the founders of crystallography, included 448 clay models of crystals. 200 of those models were selected for display at this exhibition. Using an angle measure called a goniometer to calculate the angles on the faces of crystals, Romé de Lille discovered that even when identical faces in a crystal do not develop in the same fashion, the angles formed by any two consecutive faces remain constant. This law of Romé de Lille's remains the basis of all crystallography to this day. At the start of the 20th century, life, the growth cycle of plants in nature, and morphogenesis in plants, became new themes of research in biology. Biology reached the level of cells and molecules, giving rise to icons and images never before seen by humans. Through their observation of the distinctive curving lines of these new icons and images, artists came to produce artworks inspired by germination and fluidity. Jean Arp's sculptures are instantaneous forms, grasped in an instinctive manner by the artist from a creative process analogous to nature itself. As Arp explains, we don't want to copy nature. We want to produce like a plant that produces a fruit, and not reproduce. We want to produce directly, and not by way of any intermediary. The forces of fertility are often symbolized by forms associated with generation and procreation. The cosmic egg, lingam, images of pregnant females, and other representations of fertility and sensuality have traditionally been worshipped as symbols of creative energy. For example, lingam, which in India's sacred language of Sanskrit means sign or mark, are phallic in shape, and, according to Hindu belief, are also symbolic of Shiva, the god of destruction and creation. This pure divine member, immaculate representation, is the supreme manifestation of God, the one which none can see. The fundamental principles of fertilization and embryogenesis were not understood until the 19th century. But since ancient times, artists have used these forms symbolically. In most ancient civilizations, the world's creation is often described as a conflict between two antagonistic forces, such as water and earth, order and disorder, or light and darkness. The original chaos preceding this genesis, however, is perceived as one complete entity, containing all the elements necessary for creation. This entity is often seen as an egg, the cosmic egg. The egg is also linked to the notion of fertility, the renewal of nature, and to Renaissance. The perfect form of the ostrich egg seen here conjures up images of the universe. Brancusi's newborn, evoking an infant's head abstracted to the extreme, or perhaps even an egg, also seems to symbolize the wonder of life and the origin of the world. This giant head by Note Vital is reminiscent of the sculpture of various ancient civilizations, the likes of Stonehenge. In ancient civilizations, there existed many extremely simple representations related to the human body, such as the head sculptures of Cycladic civilization, which flourished in the islands of the Aegean Sea, and the silhouettes of pre-dynastic Egypt. Similarly, in representations of animals, some artists chose not to recreate these forms in detail, but to try to depict life brimming with vigor using silhouettes alone. These pure forms were rediscovered during archaeological digs in the 19th century and immediately captivated artists. Here we present living creatures expressed in simple forms. The simple, inherent sense of abstraction in Cycladic sculptures from Aegean civilization has inspired many 20th century artists, including Constantine Brancusi, Amedeo Modigliani, and Pablo Picasso. From the island of Queros, this lyre-shaped head with a truncated cone nose displays the simple forms characteristic of Cycladic art of the 3rd millennium BC. Using materials abundant in this region of Greece, the marble was polished with a pumice stone, resulting in its perfectly smooth texture and extremely simple lines. The exact function and role of such pieces remains a mystery. They were perhaps religious figures offered to a mother goddess or ancestors, or perhaps statues that accompanied the deceased on their final voyage. Since the 1980s, Emmanuel Saulnier has used glass and water as materials in creating his work. Solo, Without Forgetting Forgetfulness, is an installation made up of two blown glass needle forms. One is filled with transparent water, the other with black ink, which has a glossy but dry effect. Standing in solitude, their subtlety generates tension in the space. At the same time, these highly refined pillars of glass, 4 meters long, 4 centimeters wide, and only 1 centimeter at one end, also lose form to become weakened lines. Evoking the transience of existence born of light and shadow, this mysterious installation directs our consciousness toward the simple truth that all things must pass, that things with form, too, will someday vanish. Costin Nicolai's Anti took its inspiration from Albrecht Dürer's Melancholia I. The engraving expresses the high order of knowledge and concern for creativity of the Renaissance artist, and contains an enigmatic, multifaceted object that alludes to geometry and astronomy. Nicolai's Anti is a non-reflecting, jet-black object, from whose interior mysterious, low-pitched sounds emerge, evoking images both of black holes and of the monolith in Stanley Kubrick's 2001 A Space Odyssey. Auntie's uncanny presence evokes a cosmic worldview and questions the origin of form and its puzzles. We hope you enjoyed Simple Forms, Contemplating Beauty. Amid the tumult of globalization, ahead of diversity, surely what we should be looking for is the beauty inherent in simple forms, essential universal qualities everyone can share. This brings us to the end of our audio tour. Kindly return the audio player to the counter. Thank you. Welcome to Simple Forms. From stone implements approximately 20,000 years old to contemporary art installations, this exhibition presents some 130 carefully chosen examples of simple forms from around the world and through the ages. Let us start by looking at Brochai's sculptures. Though Brochai is known primarily as a photographer, in parallel with his photography, he created a series of small sculptures that are endowed with gentle curves. For materials, he used simple stones found by the sea. From titles the likes of Eastern Prince and Black Venus, we can see that the stones he singled out gave flight to his imagination in free and fanciful ways. Thus, in seemingly useless objects, such as the stones and the pieces of wood that Le Corbusier or Charlotte Perriand gathered at the beach, was found supreme beauty. Through work such as these, in Section 1, Metaphysical Landscapes, we will look at how people have discovered the beauty of nature. Costin Nicolai's Auntie took its inspiration from Albrecht Dürer's Melancholia I. The engraving expresses the high order of knowledge and concern for creativity of the Renaissance artist, and contains an enigmatic, multifaceted object that alludes to geometry and astronomy. Nicolai's Auntie is a non-reflecting, jet-black object, from whose interior mysterious, low-pitched sounds emerge, evoking images both of black holes and of the monolith in Stanley Kubrick's 2001 A Space Odyssey. Auntie's uncanny presence evokes a cosmic worldview and questions the origin of form and its puzzles. We hope you enjoyed Simple Forms, Contemplating Beauty. Amid the tumult of globalization, ahead of diversity, surely what we should be looking for is the beauty inherent in simple forms, essential universal qualities everyone can share. This brings us to the end of our audio tour. Kindly return the audio player to the counter. Thank you.